This is an SM Media production.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Report right here on SM Media. I'm Scotland Pike. It's a pleasure as always to be the host, and I'm delighted this week to be joined by one of my favourite people to talk to Celtic about. It's Michael Shearer.
Hi, Scott. It's great to be back on the podcast after a very exciting game today and rather unusual weather.
I don't know who'll be busier, me or you doing this podcast, or the linesman that must have flagged about 30,000 offsides.
That's certainly a part of his game that Abada needs to work on. I've never noticed it so much as I did today. It was quite worrying, really.
Janka is just lazy. Maybe not laziness, but Janka is just kind of sharpness with him because he's been out for so long. Like, I thought that today. I thought he was a bit heavy in terms of some of his kind of movement and things like that. But I noticed it badly today. He must have been caught offside. At least double figures, I think we're into.
It was a busy day for the linesman, put it that way. It probably is a lack of match sharpness and just getting back into the swing of things Abada, because that was a really long injury he had, and obviously come on against Rangers for a little cameo appearance, and he didn't look himself then. But he looked a bit better today, and I think he'll just get better as the season goes on. It's quite exciting to have him for the second half of the season at Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll get into obviously talk about the game against Buckie Thistle, a 5-0 home victory, probably as routine as you can get. Difficult conditions. I think before we get into talk about Celtic, I think we need to give a lot of credit to Buckie Thistle because that atmosphere, that occasion can get to them. But I thought overall they kind of handled it pretty well.
I've seen teams come to Celtic Park and play much worse and get a better result than that. And they were unlucky with Celtic and the chances Celtic created. And they seemed to nullify them for periods of the game. But it was some great finishing that meant Celtic won the game. But at the same time, you've got to give them so much credit. Coming down to Celtic Park, the weather, the pressure that's put on them, especially in social media, there's been a lot of newspapers following Buckie Thistle very closely, and they've had to live with that. And then they came to Celtic, they almost scored. They had a great chance in the game, and it was, if not for Joe Hart's save, that would have been a goal.
In terms of the lineup, obviously, this has been the first game in a while. Probably the only surprise. I was maybe a wee bit surprised we didn't see so like Salaga Bielka, even Bernabei coming in, like Welsh, for example. Probably the only surprise was Odin home for Callum McGregor.
That was very surprising. I know you would think Callum McGregor would get rested quite a lot in domestic cup games in the earlier stages, but that's never really materialised in recent years. And for Brendan Rodgers to give Odin Thiago home that opportunity is brilliant, and he really showed his class. He looks much more comfortable in that position
Yeah.
as a deep line playmaker. He doesn't look to be a number 10. I think he's played a lot of minutes in a two holding man midfield. So it means that when you play as the lone holding midfielder for Celtic, it's very similar to that role because you're getting forward as well. You're not just sitting deep. And him linking with Matt O'Reilly led to one of the goals. And that's him running for deep. And he looked more comfortable doing that than having his back to goal beside a striker. And his possession was tidy. He's a physical player as well, but he's got that athleticism. I think if you want to play that position at Celtic, you've got to be defensively aware, but you've also got to bring something to the attack, and he done that today.
Yeah. I think as well as you say, he hasn't really been able, obviously with McGregor been in, he's not been able to play, I think, his natural position. And I think we will and later on in the season you might see a couple of times he'll maybe get 20 minutes here and there. He's not going to displace Callum McGregor. But I did like him today. I thought his feet were nice. I thought he was able to kind of get on the ball a lot more. I thought he was able to pick up the ball. I have been overly positive about Odin Holm since he came in, and I think we might see him in a better light in his natural position when we can. And I'm kind of interested to see who Celtic get in the draw because I think if he gets another time in there, I think he could have another good position. I thought the midfield today overall the balance was lovely. I know it's Buckie Thistle, and I think overall that midfield three today was absolutely fine.
Oh, it was brilliant. I even thought watching Bernardo, he was a little quiet in the first 5 or 10 minutes, but then he really came into the game with that goal, and that's a real sign of his class. He's adding the goals and the assists. To play for Celtic as a midfielder, you need to get those goals and assists. O'Reilly's done it this season, and now Bernardo's starting to do it as well. He looks a very classy player. He adds a physicality, I think, that Hatate doesn't have, and a defensive awareness. It's more tactical the way he plays the position than Hatate, who likes more freedom. But I think at times Celtic look better with Bernardo. He might not always be eye catching in some games when he doesn't score an assist, but he's always involved in the play. He keeps things tidy, and he was put under a lot of pressure having to play against Atletico Madrid earlier in the season, and it was a strange situation. But over the last month or so, he's really come into his own, and I think with every passing game, we're seeing more of his game and what he brings. When we're in at a time, people didn't really know what sort of player he was, even though he had been playing for the Portugal under-21 national team, and it's not easy just to do that. And he's been starting consistently for them, and now he's doing it for Celtic. It's very exciting to see what he's going to do. And I also want to say that Brendan Rodgers says the transfer fee option to buy that they have is affordable. So that looks to be moving positive. If he can improve himself in the second half of the season, I think Celtic will sign him.
Yeah, there's going to be a piece going out this week on the Patreon where we look at whether the Paulo Bernardo is worth value for money. I do think it's an interesting point. I think as well, just playing a bit more advanced, there looks to be a lot more confidence. I noticed this in the Rangers game actually. It just looks a lot more confident, and I think that can work wonders, especially when you're coming from. Then there is natural pressure on him because of the Benfica connections worked in the past with Jota. I think that is a natural pressure. And I think the past few weeks you've seen him just kick on. And I personally, if it is affordable as Brendan Rodgers said, I would 100% go for it.
I think as well, it's also depends how much it is because it's been bandied around from what 1.5 million all the way up to about 6.5 million.
If it's 1.5, I would
definitely
start a crowdfunder right now.
Definitely. So it will be interesting to see what the final fee is because it's been so rumoured about what it actually is, and there's not been a definitive source who says it's definitely this amount of money.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously Brendan Rodgers and Celtic know how much the agreement is. So that will probably be something that we'll learn by the end of the season.
The draw has just come through for the 5th round, and it's an away trip to St Mirren.
That will be an interesting tie, especially with St Mirren. But Cohen will be cup tied, I'd imagine. Then.
I would imagine it. Yeah, I think it would be. I think there's a
even though he impressed.
He looked good. Looked good actually. I was going to actually touch on him as well. I think going to we saw it with Christopher Ayer going to Kilmarnock. I think alone like that, getting experience of the game and playing in a low block. You know what I mean? He's going to come up against Rangers. He's going to get a kind of hands-on experience of how tough Scottish football can be, and I think this loan spell could do him the world of good.
He is arguably one of the most confident signings Celtic have ever made, and how he talks about himself and saying he'd be the best player in Scotland. So he's got a chance to prove himself at St Mirren and doing so. And it'll be interesting to see how he works in that system, because as you said, it's a different system for Celtic, and he'll come up against teams like Aberdeen, Rangers, Hibs, and Hearts, who will put a lot of pressure on him, and we'll see how he lives up to that.
Right, let's get into the game. Let's have a look at the kind of first 17 minutes. There was a few chances. Obviously, there was the 4-minute VAR nonsense, which kind of was obvious was that it was never ever going to stand. But nice goal in the 25th minute. I really liked the build-up play, and I thought the finish for Bernardo was excellent. And I know I'll keep saying this, it's Buckie Thistle at home, but I was really encouraged, especially the first goal. I thought Bernardo's chip, just his confidence, his coolness, very good.
He just really finished where he left off against St Mirren, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it was, as I said, he started the game a bit slow, and I was like, oh, whereas Bernardo, he's not been popping up so much, and then he just pops up with that brilliant goal. And yet again, Matt O'Reilly's involved. If Matt O'Reilly isn't scoring goals, he's setting up goals for his teammates. And the finish is incredible. And his first touch really just sets up that finish, and the goalkeeper has no chance when he puts it right over him. And that's exactly what I want to see from him, because he's going to need to score goals and assists consistently if he's going to keep Hatate out of the team. And I think Hatate will be desperate to get back into the starting 11 for the second half of the season.
Yep, absolutely. It was 2-0 shortly thereafter. Odin home, first goal for the club. Again, just nice combination. Just that one touch stuff that you're going to be able to do, and you're obviously get a lot more time in the ball. And the one touch and home again, that can be a big goal for him. Can be a big goal for confidence, as we say. McGregor will definitely come back in and take the place, but he's got that first goal. He's that kind of that's off his mark. That's him off the mark.
That's what you want to see as well, that link-up play against a low block, because at times this season Celtic have struggled with that. And obviously Buckie Thistle are going to come to Celtic Park and try and defend. And to see him and O'Reilly linking up is brilliant. I think O'Reilly just links up brilliantly with everybody, and he raises everybody's game to another level. Everybody's playing at his level when he's alongside. It just makes the team look far better, and he's an incredible player, Matt O'Reilly. He's completely smashed the expectations. I remember writing an article at the beginning of the season about my expectations for Matt O'Reilly, and he's just completely smashed that. And he's just going to keep getting goals and assists consistently. And his all-round game is just immense right now. And as you can see, all the rumours of teams being interested in him, Celtic will try and hold on to him until the summer. But it'll be interesting to see how much money they will get from him, because, in my opinion, he's one of the most valuable assets Celtic have ever had.
I really think, and I know you wrote something at the start of the season, and I remember having this discussion with you, I think with Alan Morris, I think it was the first show we did. We'll talk about who can Brendan Rodgers kick on to the next level. And I think all three of us said Matt O'Reilly. And you just look, what is the difference? I think that's an interesting, what has been the tweak, because he just looks to be a far better player, but he was doing that all before. But there just seems to be that extra 10% in his game in every aspect that's just put him. So I think on form, best player in the Premiership without a doubt.
I think he has more freedom in position. I think this has been covered by a lot of people, that Andrew's system had way more instructions on a player in every situation, ability to dribble, pass the ball, who to pass the ball to. Whereas O'Reilly now has more freedom to make those runs into the box when he feels comfortable to in the right situations. And some players have benefited from that this season and some haven't. But O'Reilly just has that freedom in his game now to get goals. And I think that might have been a bit of a mental thing as well, O'Reilly, because I watched him last season and the season before, and he would always get those chances and he wasn't taking them and scoring in front of goals. But now, beginning of the season, that goal against Ross County really set him off.
Yeah.
It was an incredible finish. And he's got that mindset, and he's such an intelligent person as well, Matt O'Reilly. When you listen to him and he talks about his yoga and the things he does off the pitch, he clearly looks after himself, and he's just going to continue in this form. He's just been incredible this season, and it was certainly a player we all looked at. It could have went one way or another under Brendan Rodgers, and it certainly went positively.
Yeah, absolutely. Third goal was nice. Again, nice bit of play, nice ball across the face, and it was Kyogo. Again, nice bit of movement just to get behind the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper comes out way too early, but it's a nice goal. And Kyogo, and again, you want to see Kyogo scoring against better opposition than that, but that goal, he's been in and out. Kyogo, he's obviously scored that brilliant goal against Rangers, but. And again, this could be another big moment for him, getting that goal, just getting that wee monkey. I think there'll be a fire lit under him that he is not away with Japan.
I think it's interesting, and something that a lot of people don't talk about is the relationship between him and Leo Abada.
Yeah.
Kyogo looks far more involved in the game when Abada's there. The ball's are going into the box, whereas with Palma, he likes to cut inside and shoot. But Abada does like to score goals, obviously, and we know that, but he also puts those balls into the box, and Kyogo looks far more threatening. And I think that's something we should look at in the second half of the season, how that's going to work. Because those two have developed such a relationship with each other. They both joined the club around the same time, and they had such an amazing impact, Kyogo and Abada. And today it was clear that Kyogo's constantly trying to make that run in the box, and that's where he gets the majority of his goals. I know he scored that goal against Rangers outside the box, but I think that's only one of like three goals he scored outside the box in his Celtic career. So he wants those goals in the box along the ground, and Abada will do that. And as we saw today, that's going to happen in the second half of the season. We're going to see another Celtic. We won't see the Celtic we've seen for the first 3 or 4 months of the season. But things are clearly changing very rapidly, and I think the rest of Scotland should be quite worried.
I think there's a nice dilemma now for Rodgers, where Kuhn's coming in. We put a piece out, and I was speaking to Tom Littler from the Austrian Bundesliga podcast, and he was saying something very interesting, that he's observed Palma, and he says Palma and Kuhn are very similar in different ways. Like, obviously Kuhn will like to cut in his left, Palma likes to cut in his right. I think that could be a really nice balance in the wings, but you've also Abada can come in there, Maeda can come in for a certain type of game. From going from a position where the wing positions were a massive concern 2 months ago, I think if everybody stays fit, there's a lovely depth in there.
And they don't have to play Kun. It's not a sort of situation with Yang earlier in the season where I think Yang wasn't signed expected to start every game.
No.
And with the injuries to Abada and Maeda, that happened, and that pressure was there, and he wasn't able to live up to that standard. But with Kun, he's got Abada, Maeda. I think they'll both play on the right hand side. Maeda seems to have moved completely over to the right hand side under Rodgers. That's one of his tactical tweaks. Whereas Palma's more of Palma's really the only certain left winger because everyone else has been sort of moved around. Like Yang has played left, right. Mikey Johnson played left and right, like he did today off the right hand side. So when you see this, and Kuhn can also play right and left, but I think of all the wingers, Palma's a cert to start off the left hand side, whereas there's so much competition for that right hand side. And even though some players might not feel the most comfortable playing on the right wing, they'll have to if they want to get in the side.
Where Palmer made it 4-0 again, nice finish for Palmer, but we saw some interesting changes. Abada and Kyogo went off, and we saw the introduction of Rocco Vata, and not long after he came on, he got his first goal. Nice footwork for Mikey Johnson and Vata with the finish. Now, I've been of the opinion a lot, and people can listen to the Lowland League show, and I've been very vocal that Rocco Vata is way too good for the Lowland League. And I would like to see him be given a chance now. Will he be at the club in 10 days? Again, it's unclear. If he is, I would 100% give him a chance.
It's a very complicated situation, isn't it? Remember, I wrote an article earlier on the season about what's gone, but it's completely shifted. The narrative seems completely different now in the past week and a half that he wants to sign. That those rumours weren't coming out that he's willing to sit down and negotiate with Celtic. It looked like the terms that Celtic had offered weren't what he was wanting. But the big question is with the Celtic B team to the first team, there's such a jump in the leagues. So obviously Vata's too good to play in the Lowland League. He's basically scoring a goal a game. But then again, he's not going to be immediately at the level of Kyogo. But it's about that development. And I think the big difference for me between Brendan Rodgers and Ange is Rodgers will take those risks and put those players in the cups. And realistically, that's what Celtic need to be doing to produce more young players. Rodgers, when you look at the players on the side, you've got players like Mikey Johnston, Ralston. Those were players that Rodgers took a risk with and brought into the side, and he's going to do that. He done that today. And in a game like this, when you're playing Buckie Thistle, you want to see that because it's the level of opposition. You want to see young players given a chance. It's so positive the last 30 minutes to see these young players on the pitch, and they're hungry. Vata was very hungry to get a goal, even though he looked quite raw. But the one thing I've noticed about that is he's moved to more of a striker. He did initially begin as a winger, but I think Celtic have been working on that. I think they see him as a striker now, and that's where his development's going to come up front.
I would be very keen to keep him. I think letting him go for nothing, I think could be maybe not nothing, but I think letting him go for a cut price fee could be massively dangerous. I think get him in a new deal. I do, especially now if again we'll talk about it later. But if no striker comes in, I think there is a perfect opportunity for Vata to get a chance because he will get opportunities if he's there and thereabouts because you're going down the route. Mikey Johnson still getting them. Like Yang, I've not been fully convinced with. Do you know what I mean? The boy Kelly came on today and I thought looked fine as well. These guys will get opportunities, but they have to be trusted. And I think today he couldn't have done himself any harm by coming on, scoring. I know it's silly what I'm about to say here, but even getting a booking, I think just shows you that he's got something about him.
Physical, that was the one thing I really noticed about him that I obviously haven't watched him as much as you have in the Lowland League, but he's very physical for his age as well, and he's going to get even more physical. He's fast as well. He's hungry, he presses, he was desperate to get a goal. You see some players come on and the occasion gets the better of them. The occasion certainly didn't get the better of him. And the same with Kelly as well. I thought he was very interesting to watch because you hear more about Vata because he scores goals consistently, whereas someone like Kelly, the fans get to learn a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
So I was definitely very excited to see Vata. It's such a complicated situation with his dad having played for Celtic, but then his career isn't progressing at the rate I think that he wants it to progress at. Like he wants first team football in a top league, like the Scottish Premiership or even Serie A, but he's been playing in the Lowland League. But Brendan Rodgers is the manager to bring him through. It's a different situation with Ange. Ange was just completely results driven, whereas Brendan Rodgers will try and find a balance between bringing in young players. He is that sort of manager. Look at his career; he's consistently done it at Liverpool, bringing players in like Raheem Sterling into the first team and to great success. So I think that's a situation to watch, and I think Brendan Rodgers will have had a deep discussion with him in the past couple of days and in the next coming of weeks, he will, about his future at the club. And realistically, in my opinion, he wouldn't have come on today if they didn't think there was a good chance he'll sign a new contract. Because there's no reason to bring on a player that's going to leave the club in the next couple of weeks or even the summer.
No, I do. If you'd said to me a week ago, is Rocco Vata going to be at Celtic at the end of January, I would have said I sincerely doubt it. I think just today, the wee tweak, I think, could have made a wee difference. And I think it will be a smart piece of business if Celtic are able to tie him down. But overall, 5-0, the weather was horrific, obviously. I hope, and I know a lot of people in the Buckie Thistle camp were of the opinion that they needed to leave early to get home. I hope they did get home, but it was just one of those occasions. It was brilliant for Buckie, routine for Celtic, and it's on to the next round. But it was a good confidence builder. It was exactly what Celtic needed it and wanted it to be.
It was a very good performance when I was watching the game. You watch Celtic so much this season, and a lot of times it's average at best. But it was the sort of performance you want to see in the Scottish Cup back in January after the break, and a nice convincing win, an early goal. The momentum was certainly there. They looked fast in their play. And sometimes the criticism of Brendan Rodgers' team this season is they've been slow at playing out for the back, but over the past month, I think they've been getting faster. They're looking more comfortable. And the Rocky as well, I think he's very good on the ball. He's certainly far better defender on the ball than Scales. He doesn't have that hesitancy,
I like the
and I think
balance
that's why
between
they
him and
signed him.
Scales. Actually, I know like we'll see them in better games, but even like against like St Mirren, I just thought I think that balance here. Obviously, Nawrocki coming in. I think Nawrocki was brought in to be the Starfelt replacement, but I think having somebody in the left-footed beside him, I think's helping him.
Mhm. Well, also he can play left centre back, so that gives even more competition for Scales. But as
Yeah,
you say, as you rightly say, that him playing right centre back is going to be even more comfortable with his strong foot being right footed. So it just makes things look a lot more clearer of what's happening. I was of the opinion that he was better than Lagerbielke at what I'd saw of him. In the situation with Lagerbielke, there wasn't an injury with Lagerbielke. Whereas with Nawrocki, there was a serious injury that took him out for an extended period of time, and it was just more about getting back into the flow of things. And Welsh was obviously given opportunities, but Nawrocki, the way he came on against Rangers, I think he had one misplaced pass as soon as he came on. But apart from that, he's looked very comfortable on the ball. I think the only part of his game he might struggle with is the physicality
yeah.
in the air sometimes, but I've started to be convinced about that. But it's certainly exciting to see what he's going to bring to Celtic as a backup option. And with rumours of Carter Vickers sitting down for a contract negotiations, the Nawrocki is certainly a one for the future at Celtic, even though he will certainly get game time with injuries because Celtic just seem to have this format of players getting injured in defence out of nowhere at centre back. It just really, a player could have an amazing performance and then the next minute they're down injured.
Right, we'll move into transfers because I do think the next 10 days will be very interesting. We're recording this on Sunday night, literally 2 hours after the Liverpool game, where a major bit of news that broke this morning was that Celtic were close to signing Owen Beck. And just like that, Jurgen Klopp put a kibosh on that by bringing him on for Liverpool. And that basically eliminates any chance of him signing for any club apart from Dundee between now and the summer. Now, I don't know. Was Owen Beck as Owen Beck the long term man? I've been very impressed with him at Dundee. Could he have made the step up? But I mean, we were talking about it off air. I think the left back position is something that needs addressed seriously. Probably should have been addressed in the summer. There needs to be a quality upgrade. I think that we'll touch on goalkeeper in a minute, but in terms of left back, I think it's a position that really needs massively upgrade. I think that in goalkeeper as they got upgrade positions.
I think as well, recruiting in those two positions is so difficult, but because there's got to be so much scouting. I'm not
Yeah.
saying other position there's not a lot of scouting get into the scouting department, but we've seen in recent years with Barkas, then we've seen Ball and Goalie, even Bernabei, they've joined the club for decent fees. Celtic have spent reasonable money on signings that looked exciting, and have just not been able to work their way into the first team. I think that's a credit to Greg Taylor. He gets a lot of criticism, but I don't think many people would argue that Greg Taylor's not giving his all for Celtic, and I think he is performing to the level that he can. Like that's nothing to do with him. That nobody else at the club is a better left back than him. That's not his problem. That's Celtic's problem to recruit somebody better. We own Beck, as you said. It's a different system he played in at Dundee. He was playing as a wing back mostly this season, and he had more freedom to get forward. And he's quite an attacking player. It would have been interesting to see how he fitted into Celtic's system. But I think if Celtic do sign a left back, it will signal a shift in the style of play to an overlapping fullback. That inversion, Rodgers has sort of almost been forced back into doing that because he was trying to do it with Taylor earlier in the season, and it just wasn't working, trying to get him to overlap. So now he's just inverting a lot more. But I don't see Rodgers in the long term playing with fullbacks who invert. So it will certainly be somebody who likes to overlap and get forward. But then the question is, how do they react to the physicality aspect? How are they in the air? How are they defensively 1v1 against wingers on the counter attack? So there's so many things to consider when signing a left back for Celtic. And even though they've spent money in that position, just realistically, since Kieran Tierney, they've signed Taylor, and he's been an ample replacement. He's not been to the level of Kieran Tierney, but they've not been able to sign someone to that level where you think, oh, this left back is really incredible for Celtic. And I think that's unfair in Greg Taylor to say that, but Greg Taylor is competent. But if they want to go to the next level in the Champions League and domestically win even more games, they need to sign a better left back. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, and it was interesting the boy Merlin it on over the summer, and Beck. I think Owen Beck could go on to be a good long term prospect. I wouldn't be surprised if Celtic explore that again in the summer. One player that's made a bit of attention, we spoke about him a bit last week, was Kievan Kelleher at Liverpool, the goalkeeper. This name is interesting. Again, Celtic could just go and raid Liverpool, I think, but I really think if this is an option, Celtic need to 100% pursue it, because I think he's a Republic of Ireland goalkeeper. He's got a massive future in the game. He's not. I don't think he's going to displace Alisson anytime soon. If Celtic are able to get anywhere close to this, go and get him. Even if it's a loan to buy and the fees high, this is a position that needs addressed. Joe Hart has been serviceable. He's not the long-term number one. If Kievan Kelleher is the answer, that to me is exactly who Celtic should be going to look at.
It's quite hard to analyse Kelleher as well because he's played in the League Cup and it's obviously been a second string Liverpool side. So it's hard to gauge exactly what level he is in comparison from anywhere from Alisson Becker to Joe Hart. He's obviously somewhere in the middle of that. But he's been impressive for Liverpool, especially his penalty save and his shot stopping. But the only thing that worries me is the 20 million fee quoted. I don't see it.
I don't see it
in any world. Celtic will pay 20 million, and I hope it's not 20 million for Celtic's sake. And they've been linked to plenty of goalkeepers, but I think the one thing I will say is I don't think Celtic will sign a goalkeeper in January.
No.
I think Joe Hart will just work out to the end of the season. In my opinion, that is risky for Celtic. I think Joe Hart's underperformed, and the statistics and data does show that the shots he's faced this season, he's conceded more goals than he should have, whereas across the city, Jack Butland has saved more goals than he should have. And that's the difference with Celtic and Rangers. In the goalkeeping department, they need to sign someone than just Joe Hart, who's competent, but a little less competent than he has been in the previous 2 seasons. So with that position, yet again, Celtic will need to recruit someone. But the worrying thing is, with Barkas, it seems like they've burnt their fingers with spending big fees on goalkeepers. They don't want to shell out 5 million again and then have it blow up in their face. Because with Barkas, it just seemed like a great signing that he was a goalkeeper for AK Athens, who beat Celtic in the Champions League. He had decent clean sheets numbers, and there was even highlight reels of his performances against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. So I don't think Celtic would try and get a signing like that. Whereas with Kelleher, he's been a second team goalkeeper. He's played in the cups. He's young. He wants to play for Ireland. I feel like he's been displaced quite recently. We're starting for Ireland with a goalkeeper from Southampton. He seems to be getting more starts for Ireland, and that's a problem for him. So realistically, I think he wants a move as well. And why not Celtic?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's something that Celtic should explore at least in the summer. Right, in terms of the next 10 days, Michael, I think it's going to be very interesting. I don't think it's a secret that the striking position is one that is high priority for a lot of fans. If I was to ask you at the end of January, what would you right? Kuhn's come in. There doesn't seem to be a lot of chat about anybody else, but I do think there will be signings. But where is a priority?
In my opinion, I would say goalkeeper, but I don't think they'll sign a goalkeeper. But realistically, I think that they could, on the margin, lose a game or draw a game from a mistake from Joe Hart. In my opinion, I think actually Taylor, the output you're getting for Taylor is far more competent than what you're getting for Joe Hart right now. And even though against Rangers, Hart looked relatively decent, but in recent months he's shown himself that I think this is Hart's last season at Celtic, in my opinion. Well, why else would he not have signed a new contract extension for even a year? So I think Celtic would need a new goalkeeper, but that's just not going to happen. So then we need to look at is that a left back and a striker, and it's got to be a striker that is willing to sit on the bench and work their way into the team because Brendan Rodgers will favour Kyogo, especially when he started playing the past couple of games. Then at left back, Celtic sign at left back. Are they going to start off with Greg Taylor immediately? I don't think they will.
No.
It's a similar situation to a striker. So you're realistically signing a left back and a striker that's going to have to sit on the bench and work their way into the team with maybe next season in mind becoming the first choice. So it's a difficult situation to analyse and gauge.
There's no many. Like I know, in rumours, the rumour mill can sometimes be ridiculous, but there's no really much chat. Like Scott McKenna, that wasn't really on. There's not been nothing really jumping out, and you usually hear something. Now we might hear something between now and the end of January. In terms of outgoings as well, I think we need to see at least a few. Like I know Carter Vickers has been linked. I don't think Carter Vickers is going anywhere. I think tying him down is a must. But you might see a couple of loan departures, like maybe McCarthy getting away somewhere. Like you might you might see the likes of like Kobayashi, somebody like that. I think I'm beginning to think it's going to be quite quiet in terms of both sides. I think you might see a big loanee coming in at the end of January, maybe similar to like the Robbie Keane year, somebody like that, like somebody of that kind of ilk. But I went into the January window thinking Celtic were going to get 3 or 4 in. I'm completely changed course on that.
I think worryingly, the problem is Celtic have started to find better form. Threat
Yeah,
papers
that
over
as
the
well.
cracks, doesn't it?
Kind of.
I don't know what you think, but do you think maybe 3 signings at the most, including Kuhn? Like
Probably.
that would probably be the highest, but
Yeah.
I'm still to be convinced if that will actually happen. The momentum will be shift in the next couple of weeks before the deadline. Maybe another player comes in and maybe one on the final day, but it's really up to Celtic what they want to do. And Brendan Rodgers is constantly stressing that it's quality over quantity. He's only signing players. He says now he's only signing players that bring quality, whereas in the summer it was quantity over quality with Palma. Really the only player that's went to the starting 11 over everybody else. So is he trying to shift the dynamic of who they sign? And there just looks to be a lack of cohesion in the signings with Celtic. I look back at Ange's first, I think it was 2 windows at Celtic. He completely blew everything out the water with all his signings. It was clear that Ange had a huge impact. And then I think it was in the May of the next year that Mark Lawwell joined. And since then, the recruitment has just not been up to scratch. And I don't think many Celtic fans would trust Matt Lawwell as the head of recruitment and signing players. Like who has he signed that's made a huge impact? With Alistair Johnson, Palma, yeah. But how many windows are we talking about? We're talking about 3, 4, 5 windows he's had to make signings, and he's just not really done that. They've not improved the squad, in my opinion, really at all since Ange's first season. That there's been the odd signing here or there that's came in. Maybe they make substitute appearances, but they've not been constantly improving. Whereas it seemed like they peaked with Ange and they got to a level, and then they kept the players and they sold the odd one. But then again with Rodgers now, he's in a situation where is he want to have talks with Matt Lawwell, and say to him what's going on here, because we're not improving at the level we need to be to get better. We spent, what was it, 20 million in the summer they spent, Scott?
Roughly, yeah. No bit about that.
Yeah, 20 million they spent. That's a serious amount of money to spend on a lot of players,
Project players mainly.
project players,
Has-
and realistically, are the better project players than what Celtic had? Arguably not. Realistically, and these players are most of them just go out on loan. And the one that worries me the most is Lagerbielke. Looking at his data, he's not a defender for a possession team. He's a defender likes to work in a low block, defend his box. So who's scouting that? Who's looking at a defender like Lagerbielke and saying, "Oh, he fits Celtic. Okay, he's good in there." But then again, there's so much more to being a defender on a possession dominant side. And you hear the rumours that it was Starfelt's agent that linked him with Celtic, and that's how the move progressed. And then again, you look at Abada. They got really lucky with Abada because he had Dudu Dahan at the time, who's worked closely with Celtic, and it's incredible how lucky Celtic got with Leo Abada because they obviously just signed him because of that. And it's similar with some of the signings, the agents over statistics and data and analysing them. And that's really worrying to see as a fan that your club's signing players because of the relationship they have with an agent. That's no way to go about your business as a football club and trying to progress.
No, absolutely not. And I go back to that January window with Ange's first season. I think was it 4 points at that point? I think Celtic were behind. And we knew obviously that Maeda and Hatate came in. Remember Hatate had that remarkable game at playing against, I think it was at Hibs. I think Maeda scored his debut, am I right? I think.
Yeah, he scored his debut and then Hatate Hearts.
And then O'Reilly came in and you just seen this Hatate and O'Reilly just helped advance the midfield, and then Maeda came in. And I always say like the most chemistry that front three had was Jota, Giakoumakis and Abada because they linked so well together. And then you had this wee ace Kyogo who could come in and do all kind of three. That was the turning point for that Ange side. The worry I've got with Celtic right now is if that is, and I do think you're right in terms of the advance. Bernardo's kicked on, Kuhn's came in. Do you know what I mean? Abada's back for injury. Is that right? Brendan Rodgers thinking right? I needed maybe 3 or 4 in the January window, and now I've got Abada coming back. He's looked good since he's been back. Bernardo's kicked on. Home can go in there if McGregor gets injured. That sleeping in your laurels is not going to work. I don't care what. If you went in there with the mindset of you need 3 or 4 players, and he was very, very vocal at the start of the window, he needed quality. That hasn't changed. Doesn't matter if the form's picked up and players are coming in. He needs to stick by his laurels and go, right, I need to continue this. The scouting thing with Law and things like that, I think that's a podcast in itself because I think it's been a massive, massive concern over the summer. But if Rodgers went in there with that thought, he needs to stick to it, in my opinion, because if he doesn't, if they fall asleep at the wheel, we've seen in the past. Remember the famous window where Celtic were linked with Stephen Fletcher and ended up signing Willow Flood. What happened at the end of the season? That could happen again.
Here's my question for you, Scott. See, when Ange joined, Celtic had arguably the biggest crisis in the past 20 years with the squad. Did they have to be in a huge crisis to sign players to improve the squad? Like a number of players, you can sign. They've signed the odd player here and there that's improved the squad. And you want players that come into the side and immediately make an impact, but did it have to be in the biggest crisis in the past 20 years to sign players?
No, I think that whole time of Ange was very lucky because I think Ange
exactly,
and we see this at Tottenham, and this is when I saw people questioning the Timo Werner signing for Tottenham. I said that's exactly what Ange will been looking at that.
It's just like that, isn't it?
100%. He knows what he wants, whereas I think Brendan Rodgers, and this is what fascinates me with Brendan Rodgers, if he's happy, if he's truly happy, because his first spell, what was the big thing coming out in his last season? He wasn't getting the players he wanted. Famously, didn't get a certain Aston Villa player who's went on to be £30 million. Things like that. He's coming back, and those same wee things are beginning to surface again. And I find the next 10 days interesting because if we don't see anybody else between now and the end of the window, I think that could mount up.
I think the momentum's maybe shifted that a wee bit better than it would have been a month or so ago.
Yeah.
That could maybe paper over it, but you're really talking on the margin here, Scott. I think we're in a title race. I don't see Celtic winning this convincingly, which maybe some Celtic fans don't want me to hear saying. But at the same time, Rangers have signed Fabio Silva, and we'll see the impact he's able to make. And I know the Rangers have their own problems, and I'm not going to discuss that. That's not for me to discuss. But with Celtic, the issues here are so clear for everybody to see. And this got to a point around a month ago where this was boiling over. People's just completely stopped mentioning that, with the people shouting at the board, sack the board, Peter Lawler, and that just over a month ago. And as you say, that could easily happen in the next couple of months if results don't go their way. 2 or 3 results don't go the right way in the leagues specifically. And I think it's a number of people who's to blame. But I also think Rodgers likes to go about his recruitment in a certain way. I don't think he likes to be solely in charge of recruitment. He likes to have someone. But from what I heard, Matt Lawler was Ange's guy, even though he is Peter Lawler's son. Apparently, Matt Lawler, the City Group, yeah. So then again, it goes to the relationship. Whereas did Rodgers not have? Was it Mark Hammond? Rodgers had, and Lee Congerton as well. Congerton.
Yeah.
So he had somebody in that even, and they had a good relationship. But then again, as you say, the signings were coming in Rodgers' first spell, and they've only adding up. Malumbu, I think that one signing just sums up everything. Celtic were signing
Marvin Shved. That will be the one that sticks with me forever.
I know. He was such an out there signing, and even though he had good numbers scoring goals, what Rodgers says about that really killed that player's career at Celtic, didn't it? Like even before it got started, that was it, over pretty much. That there was no cohesion in the department. I think Celtic are falling far behind a lot of teams for recruitment. They want to say they're like Ajax.
Do you not think that's unthinkable considering where we were a year ago, where we were raving about Ange's recruitment was sensational. In the first year, you can count in one hand the amount of disappointments in terms of at the time how they fit. Like I always go back to even bringing in Aaron Moy. What do you mean? What age was he? 31. He just came in, and you look now and you think Aaron Moy. That's a bigger hole than any. Like Jota, even Jota. Moy's been a bigger loss in terms of the structure than most players in that have left in the summer.
I think what I would say about that is that window wasn't spectacular at all. Apart from that one signing, arguably, who was an incredible signing for the one season. You're wanting Brendan Rodgers to bring in a player like that. He has a relationship with. He knows the level. That's the sort of thing I want to be seeing for Celtic. So I want a balance between taking risks in young, hungry players and ready-made players that's just going to go straight into the first team. That Brendan Rodgers knows what they could bring. A Scott Sinclair. I think we all seen what happened when you splashed out that money on Scott Sinclair and Brendan Rodgers' first spell. They need somebody like that, whether it be at left back or up front. It's going to make the difference. And even a goalkeeper. Is there a goalkeeper out there that Brendan Rodgers had a great relationship with in his career that's just going to take Celtic up a level? Because in my opinion, this season they were unlucky in the goalkeeping department in Europe. They could have got a few more results, an extra win or a draw. And crazily enough, that would have been the difference between finishing 4th and 2nd in the Champions League. We would have all been heralding Celtic if they finished 2nd in their Champions League group. There wasn't a huge gap between Lazio and Feyenoord and Celtic. And even though they lost both games against Lazio, we're really talking about the last 5 minutes of the games as well. They lost this Champions League campaign and not being able to progress in Europe. And who's to blame for that? And who's to get praised for how well they've done under the circumstances? Rodgers has got to take the praise, and then the recruitment's got to take the criticism for not being able to take Celtic up a gear. And this is a Celtic side with Jota and Moy, as you rightly say, and Starfelt, and we're able to do that in Europe. And that's down to Brendan Rodgers and what he was able to do against bigger teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think recruitment is something we're going to certainly be thinking about between now and the end of January. Michael, we've got a game on Saturday where Celtic host Ross County. I think Celtic should be absolutely licking their chops because I think any situation where we can see Derek Adams lose the plot, I think could be interesting. I think Celtic win this comfortably.
I would be really worried if I was a Ross County fan, and I don't think that's so much to do with Celtic, actually. I think what's going on at Ross County, I think everybody's sort of looking and saying...
baffling me, by the way, like, properly.
And the players he wants to get rid of, like Simon Murray, players like that, he wants to get rid of these players. Like, it doesn't want them to stay at Ross County, even though they've contributed largely over the last year and a bit. And even though he had such a great relationship with Ross County, this is his third spell, am I right? And being at the club, there's so much going on in the background there that I don't know even know how long it'll last, Scott. If results just keep going over the next month, he could lose his job again.
He could, yeah, he could. But it could be very interesting. It's going to be a very interesting week from a Celtic perspective. We will be back. We'll be the player ratings will be going out for the Buckie game. I've obviously got some interesting articles going out over the next few days. Michael, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode, and I really appreciate it, mate. It's been brilliant.
Thanks a lot for having me back on, Scott. It's always a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks very much, folks. We'll see you soon.